I want us to go through internal control because remember we said we focus on governance, risk, and internal control. Even when we start planning an engagement, remember you start from a risk register. There is no way you can be able to plan engagement without understanding risk, without understanding internal control. Because when we start teaching you how to collect audit evidence in terms of designing compliance procedures, designing substantive procedures, and testing those, you will be using the internal control because it's the internal control that you will be testing. At this level, it's not only about the theories, it's all about application. So, same thing with internal control. All you will be doing is writing internal controls, identifying internal controls in a scenario, or recommending internal controls. What will be important for you is to know the concepts or the principles that you use when you have to recommend internal control. Remember, when we were doing risk, we said an organization will have objective, will have things that they want to achieve or they are trying to achieve as an organization. Those can either be at strategic level, it can be at operational level, it can be reporting objectives, it can be compliance objectives to ensure that we comply with all the applicable law, we are efficient in terms of operation, we are achieving our targets as an organization that we've set. Those objectives at times will also have performance indicators to ensure that we put measures in place that we can be able to evaluate ourselves as an organization and measure if we are about to achieve those objectives. But we also know that things will not always run smoothly. There are things that might thwart our effort, or there are things that might go wrong within the organization, preventing us from achieving those objectives, which is what we were doing last week, risk. Now, internal control then is asking ourselves, how can we manage those risks? What measures can we put in place? Because we need to be proactive. We cannot put objectives in place but wait until the uncertain event thwart us from achieving those objectives. We need to think ahead. That's why we're doing risk assessment and analyzing our risk, is so that we identify these events before they even occur, and then we put measures in place to prevent those risks from materializing or occurring, if we can put it that way. If you remember, when we're doing risk management, we said a risk can be at inherent level by virtue of going into a certain industry, by virtue of opening a certain type of a business or form of ownership. There are risks that are associated with that type of a business. There are risks that are associated with an industry. Now, we also say that inherent risk is a risk before you've implemented any internal control. How do you ensure that you are reducing the risk from inherent level into residual level? You need to put in place internal control. Now, what are internal control? Internal control is processes, it's ways of working, it's procedures, it's policies that are affected by these three levels within the organization. They can be affected by the board because some might be talking to strategic objectives, and then affected by management if we are talking operations, and then by other personnel, because at the end of the day, everything that is we came up with as internal control might be cascaded down to management, and management will cascade down to other personnel within the organization. These processes, ways of working, procedures are designed to provide a reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objective. When it comes to internal control, just because you put these processes and measures in place, they are designed to provide you with reasonable assurance. It means that it's not 100% sure that you're going to achieve your objective, but based on the knowledge that you have and the principle that you've put in place, you can have a reasonable assurance. Remember, assurance, we said a level of comfort, also an enhanced degree of confidence. That means your degree of confidence can be enhanced, that as an organization, I'm going to achieve my objective. So that's the definition that is coming from COSO. These are the elements that are important when it comes to internal control. One, an internal control must be geared towards the achievement of objective. whatever that you put in place, you want to achieve your objective. You want to ensure that things that could go wrong within the organization are prevented to ensure that we can achieve our objective. It could be operational types of internal control, it could be reporting type, it could be strategic type of internal control, but all the internal control must ensure that you can achieve your objective. Another thing is that internal control is a process. There must be tasks, there must be activities to say this is an internal control. Someone needs to perform something for us to say we've put in place an internal control. Now, these internal control at times they start from an internal control, then it goes into being a policy or process, then it goes to being a job description. For example, if let's go back to CPU team. If you look at CPU team, firstly, there is an objective of safeguarding of company assets. Okay, that's the objective. Now, what could go wrong preventing us from safeguarding our assets as an institution? In terms of risk, you can start saying the organization can lose its asset, or the organizational asset can be stolen, resulting in financial loss for the organization. That means that is what could go wrong, preventing us from achieving that objective of safeguarding our assets as an organization. Then from there, they will put in place internal control and say, okay, we need to ensure that access control into the institution is maintained by firstly at the entrances, at the different building, having CCTV cameras on campus. So those are measures. Now, those measures will move at times to be policies, to start being enforced within the institution, and they will also move to being job description. Securities get employed. The only reason we have securities, it started with that objectives of wanting to safeguard our asset as an institution. You can see the link from moving from objective into the risk, into the internal control. Now those internal control become processes, and those processes will need to be affected by people. People will need to perform these actions that we've put in place to give ourselves a reasonable assurance that we're going to achieve that objective of safeguarding our company asset. Also note this, they are able to provide reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. Just because there is an security on campus does not mean that company resources will not be stolen, but at least it gives us a reasonable comfort or assurance that that risk is being mitigated. Because inherently, if there was no security, there was nothing, there was no yard there, everyone can just enter anytime they want to, that risk will be really at a high level. But with internal control, we reduce it into the residual risk that is still remaining now. There are three types or classifications of internal control that you need to be aware of. Internal control can be preventative in nature, they can be detective in nature, they can also be corrective. What do we mean when we are talking about preventative internal control? It means you are putting in place measures that are going to prevent the undesirable event before they happen. When you put a password in desktop, you are preventing someone from accessing that desktop without the proper authority. When orders require someone to authorize those orders, you are preventing people from ordering goods for personal use, because that means they cannot just go and order something without requiring a higher level management's approval. Another type of an internal control is what we call detective internal control. This one is put in place to identify undesirable events when they do happen. That means this type of internal control is much more expensive as compared to preventative, because it means the undesirable event or the risk is materializing here. But how do you ensure that you detect it from occurring further, or you can be able to identify where the root cause is at, or who's the person who has committed theft, for example, if you are looking in a sense of theft. Now, if we look at things such as video surveillance, those things are what we call detective internal control. A CCTV camera will not prevent people from stealing from the organization, but once the theft has taken place, we are able to go back and review the footage and identify the person who has committed the theft. Same things with bank reconciliations. Bank reconciliations are there with an objective of preventing errors from being processed into the annual financial statement, but they do not prevent errors to be captured into the system. Errors can be captured into the system, but once you start doing things such as bank reconciliation, you can be able to detect any error or be able to detect any omissions into the financial data that was captured. Because when you do a reconciliation, you are looking at the bank statement that you've received from the bank, but also looking at the cash book that is being extracted in the system that you are using, whether SAP or Sage. Then you are comparing the two. You are able to see transactions that are reflecting in the bank statement but not in the cash book, but you also able to see transactions that are reflecting in the cash book but not reflecting in the bank statement. Then you are able to see, was I charged by the bank without having recorded any charges or expecting any charges? Sometimes there are reconciling items that are acceptable due to things such as timing differences. Same thing with trial balances. Trial balances are also acting as a detective internal control, because if you look at the accounting cycle, you start with a transaction that needs to take place, then there will be a source document that proves that a transaction has taken place. From there, you will have your journals, whether it's CPJ or CRJ, to say, okay, these are my payment classified in the cash payment journal, then these are my receipt classified in the cash receipt journal. Then you start posting into your ledgers the different accounts into your ledgers. Then from your ledgers, before you even go into the annual financial statement, all those transactions will be posted in the trial balance to say, okay, these are the nominal accounts that are about transaction. Then these are the balance sheet accounts that I'm going to transfer into the statement of financial position. Then from there, in that trial balance, as you are classifying this amount, you are able to see any misclassification. You are detecting those errors before they even occur. That's what detective internal controls are. Then you have corrective internal control. Now here you reverse the undesirable event. It has occurred. Remember, when we were doing risk, we said some of the risk responses would be to transfer the risk, where you take out insurance. Now, when you decide and insure your asset, it does not prevent thefts from occurring or those assets from being stolen, but also it does not detect that they have been stolen. But once everything has taken place, is stolen, you could not detect who have done it to recover it, then you can decide that I'm going to claim from the insurance company. You are correcting the measure that has taken place. Same thing with bank reconciliation. Once you detect any errors, you can be able to go back in your journals and fix those errors that has taken place within the organization, or any omissions that has taken place. Because remember, we have what we call completeness as an assertion. If there are transactions that has not been included and then you detect them that have not captured this transaction, you go back and capture them, you correct whatever errors that has taken place within the organization. So those are the type of classification of internal control. But what I want us to go is here. There is a difference between internal controls and internal control principles. What is listed here, segregation of duty, it's a principle. Authorization of transaction and activities, it's a principle. Proper documentation and record is a principle. Safeguarding of assets, that's a principle of internal control. Independent checks, reconciliations, all those things are internal control principles. Now, these principles will be important because this is what you will be looking for in the scenario. Be looking for the availability of these principles. Same thing when you have to recommend a system of internal control. This is what you'll be using to recommend internal control in order to prevent the risk from materializing. Now, what I need you to note, never ever in a scenario or in an assessment as an internal control recommend that there should be a segregation of duty. Now, that is not an internal control, that is an internal control principle. You cannot say there should be proper documentation and record of transaction. that is not an internal control. That is an internal control principle. That's one thing I want you to note before we are looking at how do you structure internal control, or how do you then write these principles as internal control. Now, another guiding principle that you guys can use is this one. Now, if you look here, these are internal control principle. Having competent employees, it's a good principle because that means there will be less mistake that will be made within the organization. Having trustworthy employee is a good internal control principle because if your employees are trustworthy, that means they have integrity. Fraud and theft will be less within that organization because your employees are trustworthy, but you cannot say they should be trustworthy employees. Then segregation of duties. You don't make one employee responsible for all parts of the process. Just as the example that when you were making now, that you cannot be loading payments and also approving those payments. You cannot be filling a purchase order form and also approve that purchase order form. Those duties must be segregated because you are going to order things for personal use. Now, isolation of responsibility is when within that process or the different responsibilities that has been established, each one is isolated, and that isolation will take place by a form of a signature. When you are the one who has prepared that order form, you're going to sign as a preparer. Then another person, when your manager approves that order, they are going to sign, so that when we are inspecting the document, we are able to know exactly, based on that isolated responsibility, who has prepared this order, who has approved this for order, and who has processed this order. And that can also take place within a system. If you are using SAP or you are using Sage, each user, when they log in this system, they have got a unique identifier. So when they approve a transaction, when we go into the system, we can be able to see in the log who has processed this transaction, who has approved all these transactions based on the logs of the system, because the system is going to record all that metadata. So know that segregation is about ensuring that no one employee is involved in the full process, but isolation of responsibility will take place in a form of a signature. Then you start having things such as comparison and reconciliations. You can see there, you can start doing some comparison. That is also a principle. You can start having things such as having safeguarding of asset, having boom gates, for example. Those are also safeguarding our asset, but that is also taking place through access control by having those boom gates in terms of access control. Now, good document design, how our source documents are designed within the organization, it's an internal control on its own, ensuring that our documents are pre-designed, they are pre-numbered, and that numbering is in a sequence form. That means it's a good document. Because imagine if our document, our source document, were not pre-designed, anyone can just decide when they need to create an invoice, they will come up with whatever version that they want to have. They will design whatever. They can just go online and check an invoice and then design an invoice. So that means we'll never really know, or the organization we interact with, they can never be 100% sure that it's us who have invoiced them. Now, even if those invoices are not pre-numbered, how will you be able to see the sequence of those invoice and be able to identify if there are any missing numbers? Because if they are sequence of one upwards, you are able to, when you're counting those invoices, and ask the question, where is invoice 3? Because I cannot see invoice 3 in the sequence. So that will be an internal control on its own. Even a good internal control environment as an organization, just management setting the tone at the top, ensuring that it's the culture of the organization, it's an ethical culture that support ethics and trustworthiness by having those code of ethics within the organization. So these are all principles of internal control. So it's important to understand these principles, because when you look at a scenario, you will see activities that are taking place. Then you need to ask yourself, are these employee competent? When you start seeing people who are not trained in performing certain tasks, when you start seeing employees paying bribes? That means, are these people trustworthy? When you're seeing employees preparing a requisition form, preparing a purchase order, and approving those purchase order, that means segregation of duty is not taking place here. When someone does not require authorization, they are not isolating. How will you know who was the approver of this transaction? But they just approve maybe by word of mouth and say, no, you can go ahead, approve, without having a proper documentation for that. When there are no reconciliations being performed, there is a weakness there. But if you start seeing reconciliations, whether bank reconciliation, debtors reconciliation, creditors reconciliation being performed, then that means there is comparison and reconciliation that is taking place. When you see access control being implemented, having security guard, having electric fence, having cameras, that means they are limiting their access control only to authorized personnel. When you're seeing a warehouse maybe having a written warning that only authorized personnel are allowed beyond this point, maybe requiring a tagging system in order to access those areas, those are principles of internal control. When you're seeing a mention of document being pre-numbered and in sequence form, these are the things you'll be looking for in a scenario. Same way, when you've identified risk within a scenario, when you need to recommend internal control, ask yourself, can this risk be prevented maybe by being trustworthy as employees? Can it be prevented by having reconciliations? Can it be mitigated by ensuring that we limit access? That is going to depend on the type of risk that you've identified. If there is a risk of theft, then you can limit access into the building. You can start saying, okay, let me safeguard my asset by ensuring that assets and documents, by ensuring that they are stored in a secure area. If the risk is about errors or overstatements of financial statement, then you can start thinking, maybe if I do comparison and reconciliations, I can be able to detect those misstatements that has taken place. If you start seeing maybe it's a risk of people ordering things that are not required by the organization or ordering things for personal use, you can start thinking, okay, maybe this I can require an authorization or ensuring that there is a higher level person who is going to approve such orders. Does that make sense, people? Another way in which you can identify internal control principles or internal control within a scenario is to use what we call Scrum ANC. Guys, this is not an official word, but it's just a word that you can use to remember this concept easy. You can go in your assessment thinking Scrum ANC. We know Scrum in terms of the Scrum in rugby. Then we've got ANC that we know in terms of a political party. So you can think Scrum ANC. Now, let's look at what each letter there will stand for in the context of internal control principle. Now, if you look at S, that will be for segregation of duties. That means ensuring that no one employee is responsible for all parts of the process. So segregation of duty and isolation of responsibility will be fitting here. That means you'll be looking in that scenario and see if are they mentioning anything about employees whose duties has been segregated or split up, or authorization that requires a signature to isolate that responsibility that has been established into one person. Go to C. C will be custody of assets. That means now you are restricting access, you are safeguarding assets. Custody, remember, it's not only about assets, but it's also about documents. You cannot leave, let's say, blank checks or unused checks just lying around. They need to be put in a safe that where access will be restricted. Then you've got R, which is about reconciliations and comparison. Are there any type of reconciliations that they are performing within that scenario? Are there any comparison that needs to take place, or some checks that needs to take place? U is in terms of if you were using a manual system or manual process of transaction. Now you'll be thinking unused documents. That means if you've got a blank check, a check that is not being used, it cannot be left just lying around within the organization. If it's not used, it needs to be shredded if it's still to be used, it must be kept in a safe, because anyone can just take that check, fill it up, and go claim that payment. But now, remember, checks are not a thing now, are no longer being used. So think in a systemized environment that will be talking to your documents, ensuring that those documents are pre-numbered. Because remember, even if you are not using check, when you are using source document, those source document, it's what will be the proof that a transaction has taken place. An invoice will need to be captured, but now that invoice, is it pre-numbered and in that sequence form? Now we're going to discuss this into details in one of the letters here. Then you have M. M standing for monitoring. Is there any monitoring mechanism that has been put in place to ensure that if there are any errors that are taking place within an organization, there will be a person who is independent to monitor that, okay, we are running out of stock. That's why an organization will even monitor their inventory, will even do inventory count to monitor the level so that they can order items that they need as an organization. Also got A. A will be about authorization. Do we need that authorization in terms of, if we've established responsibilities of task, how do we segregate them and ensure that there is a preparer, there is also an approver who's going to authorize things within the organization. Then you've got N. N, it's about numbering that pre-numbered document. That means your source document, to ensure that good document design, they must be numbered, but the numbering must also be in a sequence form. Are we aligned? Then the last one in terms of C, that will be your check, your independent check, those check and balances that are taking place within the organization. So that's another way. It's not to say you must use Scrum ANC. You can use that good image there to remember the concept, but another person could be just like, okay, if I know what Scrum ANC stand for, in terms of this context, I can be able to look and ask myself, is there any monitoring? Is there any check and balance that is being done here? Are our document numbered? Are unused source document not left lying around? Are there reconciliation take place? Is the custody of our asset restricted or kept? Is there any segregation or isolation of responsibility that is taking place within this organization? Same way, when you need to recommend internal control, you can use Scrum ANC to say, can this risk be prevented by reconciliation? Can it be prevented by monitoring? Can it be prevented by numbering document in a sequence form? Now, let's say there is a risk that unwanted goods might be ordered, can result into loss of money as an organization, because if we buy things that are not wanted, we will not be able to sell those items. That means we're going to lose money. So the risk is that we can order things that are not needed in the organization. Now, what do you think is the good internal control or internal control principle that will prevent such a risk from materializing? If you look at things that we've just discussed now, if there is such a risk that we can order things that are not needed, what do you think can be put in place to ensure that does not take place? Let's write an internal control. Anytime you write internal control, we use the term should, because we are recommending something. Now, the only way you will ensure that correctiveness is if you are monitoring your inventory. Now, if we were looking here, one M there was monitoring, you can start saying inventory level should be monitored to avoid fruitless expenditure. Okay, because once you know exactly the order level and you are monitoring your inventory, you will know when you need to order something. So that's how what you use. Now, coming back to what I said to you, that you can never write an internal control and say there should be segregation of duties or there should be restricted access. You need to write exactly how does segregation of duties take place in that scenario. When you start saying the person who prepares the requisition form should not be the same as the person who approves the requisition form and places the order, for example, then I know you are talking about segregation of duties. Same thing with reconciliations. You cannot say there should be reconciliation and comparison. How does reconciliation take place in that scenario? What is it that will even be reconciled? Because there is a lot of reconciliation that can be taking place within an organization. You need to give it in words when you write an internal control. You need to provide the wording so that we understand exactly what is it that you're talking about. If there is a risk that we can receive incorrect quality and quantities of goods that will result in wastage, or that can result in shortages, because when people come and order that item, it will not be the correct quantity and quality, or it can result in reputational damage. Now, if there is such a risk in an organization, what do you think could be an internal control that will be put in place to prevent us from receiving incorrect quantities and incorrect qualities of goods? There should be a check at the entry point to check the items that we are receiving in terms of quality, quantity, and product specification. So that is what we want. You do not just use the principles, but you write the actual internal control, commending an internal control. Even the check here, remember in the Scrum ANC, the last C there is check. What you guys were doing here, you were doing check, but you did not just say there should be a check. You stated exactly how will it take place, that when we are receiving goods, they should be checked for quality, quantity, so that we know if it's the right quality and it's also the right quantity. That is what I want you, or the thought process that I want you to have, that it's not about taking the principles and plugging them in that, but it's about using the context and then, guided by the principle, recommend a system of internal control.